Hi, and welcome. My name is Bernice, and this is AngularJS. I'm reviewing AngularJS. Most of these I've gotten from ChatGPT, but there is also an AngularJS website with information out there. So, what is AngularJS? AngularJS is a JavaScript-based open source front-end framework developed by Google, released in 2010. It was mainly designed for building single-page applications, SPAs. So what is an SPA? It is a single-page application. It follows the MVC, Model View Controller pattern. What is MVC? Model View Controller, and it uses directives such as ngModel, ngBind, and others, two-way data binding, and dependency injection. How is it different from Angular 2 Plus? And so this is in 2016, Google rewrote the Angular JS from scratch and released Angular 2, followed by Angular 4, 5, and now Angular 18 in 2025. This new version is simply called Angular without the JS. It is TypeScript based framework. It's not plain JavaScript. So AngularJS is plain JavaScript. Angular is TypeScript, and it's designed for enterprise level applications with better performance, modularity, and maintainability. So the summary is AngularJS, which is 1.x, is old JavaScript based, easy to start, but limited and slower. And Angular 2 plus 2 and higher releases are the modern TypeScript based, powerful, modular, and optimized for large application. It says think of as AngularJS as the prototype and Angular as the rebuilt enterprise grade framework. Now you will find there will be enterprises that are using legacy, the Angular 2JS version, and even though it is, I think it's end of life, but it's still customers are still using it, so they still have applications that are using AngularJS. So you may need to use AngularJS in ServiceNow or in other organizations for other applications. What is scope in AngularJS? It's dollar scope in AngularJS is the glue that binds the HTML, the view. So HTML is the view, and the controller, which is the logic. What are directives? In AngularJS, a directive is a special marker, an attribute, element, or class in HTML that tells AngularJS to attach specific behavior or transform the DOM element. And the DOM is the document object model. They are used to extend HTML with a custom behavior, manipulate the DOM dynamically, reuse UI components, and types of directives in AngularJS. There's built-in directives that are provided by AngularJS, such as ngModel, ngIf, and then custom directives created by developers to encapsulate reusable components. Mention some of the most commonly used directives in AngularJS application. So the commonly used directives in AngularJS is ngApp, ngModel, ngBind, ngRepeat, ngIf, ngShow or ngHide, ngClick, ngClass, ngInit, and ngController. What is an injector? The injector in AngularJS is the mechanism that finds and provides the dependencies, the services, factories, and so on, required by your controllers, directives, and other components. What is the difference between link and compile in AngularJS? Use compile for template level DOM transformations, the document object model, and use link for scope binding, event handling, and dynamic DOM manipulations. All right, so what are the styling form and NG model? AngularJS NG model directive not only binds data but also automatically applies CSS classes to form controls based on their state. These classes are super helpful for styling and validation feedback. CSS classes added by NG model are there's state classes and then there's validation classes. And there's some examples there. Explain what a dependency injection and how an object or function can get a hold of dependencies. DI is dependency injection. In AngularJS, it takes care of creating and passing dependencies. Objects, functions can get dependencies by naming them as parameters, scope and $scope, $HTTP, or more safely via array annotation or the $inject property. What are the benefits of AngularJS? AngularJS is the original Angular. It's not the Angular, the newer version of Angular. It brought a lot of benefits to front-end development when it was released. Two-way data binding, dependency injection, the MVC architecture, directives, and form validation, built-in services, filters, testability, single-page application, and a community and an ecosystem. Explain the MVC design pattern. The MVC divides an app into a model, which is the data, the view, which is the UI, and the controller, which is the logic, to make it easier to build, maintain, and scale application. MVC stands for Model View Controller and is a software design pattern that separates an application. So for the business logic, the view, what the user sees, and the controller handles user input and updates the model and view accordingly. This separation makes it applications modular, maintainable, and scalable. Explain the MVC design pattern. So this is some more on it. The model represents the data and business rules. It's responsible for retrieving, storing, and processing data. It's not concerned with how data is displayed. Example, in a blog app, the model would be the post data, the title, the content, the author, and methods to save or retrieve the post from a database. The view represents the user interface. It displays the data from the model and sends users' actions and events to the controller. An example is HTML pages showing the blog post. In AngularJS, the views use directives like ng repeat, ng bounding to render the model dynamically, and the controller acts as the bridge between the model and the view. It handles the user inputs, the clicks, the form submissions, and updates the model and selects the view to display. Explain this is how the MVC design pattern works, the flow. The user interacts with the view, clicks a button, submits a form. The control receives the input and decides what to do. The controller updates the model, changes the data, fetches data. Model notifies the view about the changes, and the view re-renders based on the updated model. So the separation of concerns, the maintainability, and the reusability are the benefits. What is the DOM, the document object model, and how do you traverse or manipulate the DOM in AngularJS? So this is about the AngularJS. To traverse or manipulate the document object model in AngularJS with directives using link functions and element objects. Avoid direct DOM manipulation in controllers. Use built-in directives whenever possible. In AngularJS, direct DOM manipulation is discouraged in controllers and services. Instead, AngularJS provides a cleaner declarative way using directives, and directives are designed for the DOM manipulations. So the first way is to traverse or manipulate using directives. There is JQ Lite or jQuery. Why not use controllers? And controllers should focus on business logics and scope data, not the DOM. And DOM manipulation in controllers breaks the MVC principles and makes testing harder. Directives are the AngularJS approved place for DOM work. What is scope? In short, scope, a dollar scope in AngularJS is the glue that binds the controller logic to the view, the UI, and enables two-way data binding. Scope in AngularJS is the glue that binds the controller logic to the view, the UI, and enables two-way data binding. It holds the data model. It allows two-way data binding. Changes in the model update the view automatically, and changes in the view update the model. Each controller has its own scope, but scope can inherit from parent scopes. The key points, $scope is an object. It stores variables and functions for use in the view. Two-way data binding. If you update $scope.message in the controller, the HTML updates. If the user updates an input bound to $scope message, the controller sees the change automatically. What are directives, and can you name some? Directives in AngularJS are markers on DOM elements that extend HTML behavior, enabling dynamic views, event handling, and reusable components. Some common AngularJS directives used in ServiceNow service portal. So this is a list of some common ones. So ng model, ng repeat, ng show or ng hide, ng if, ng click, ng class. What is the injector? In AngularJS, an injector is a service responsible for creating, managing, and providing dependencies to different parts of the application, controllers, services, directives. It's the key part of AngularJS dependency injection. How the injector works, every AngularJS module has an injector. When a component, a controller, directive, service declares a dependency like $HTTP or custom service, AngularJS injects it automatically. The injector resolves the dependency by looking up the service and providing it to the components. What is the difference between link and compile? Compile and link are two functions used in directives to manipulate the DOM, but they serve different purposes. So the compile function, when it runs once per directive template, before the directive is linked to the scope. The purpose is used to manipulate the DOM template, adding or removing elements, changing attributes before it's bound to scope. Scope access cannot access scope yet. Return value can return a link function. A link function, when it runs after the template has been compiled and linked to the scope. The purpose used for DOM manipulation, event handling, and data binding. The scope access has access to scope, elements, and attributes. What is dependency injection? Dependency injection is a design pattern in which an object or function does not create its own dependencies. Instead, the dependencies are provided or injected from the outside. This promotes loose coupling between components, makes code modular, testable, and maintainable. In AngularJS, dependency injection is a core feature used to provide services, factories, and other dependencies to controllers, directives, and other components. What does ngModel do? In AngularJS, ngModel is a directive that binds HTML form elements such as input, select, text area to scope variables. It enables two-way data binding between the view, the UI, and the model of the scope data. What are pipes? Pipes are a feature in Angular 2, Angular with the TypeScript, not AngularJS. Angular 2 and over. They are used to transform data in the template before displaying it to the user. They take input data and return a formatted output. What does ngRepeat do? ngIf. ngRepeat is a directive that loops over a collection, array, or object and repeats a piece of HTML for each item. ngIf is a directive that conditionally adds or removes an element from the DOM based on the expression. What is interpolation? Interpolation is a feature in AngularJS that follows you to embed expressions inside double curly braces in the HTML. AngularJS evaluates the expression and replaces it with the result in the DOM. It's mainly used to display model data in the view. What is ngClick? ngClick is a directive in AngularJS that binds a function to a click event on an HTML element. It's similar to the native onClick in HTML, but integrates seamlessly with AngularJS scope and data binding. What are expressions? In AngularJS, expressions are pieces of code written inside double curly braces that Angular evaluates and displays in the view. What is a single page application and how do you achieve it in AngularJS? Single page application, SPA, is a web application that loads a single HTML page and dynamically updates the content as the user interacts with the app without reloading the entire page. So there's no page reloads, only part of the page is updated. Its dynamic content rendering uses JavaScript to fetch and display data. It's improved user experience because it feels faster and more app-like. That has client-side routing. Different views appear without navigating away from the page. An example of SPAs are Gmail, Google Maps, Trello, and Facebook. How to achieve SPA in AngularJS. It's easy. You include the ng route module and then configure the routes, define the routes, and associate them with the templates and the controllers that like site home, site about, or different views loaded dynamically. So, and this is continuous on, add ng view and HTML, and then controllers for, and then you have controllers for each view. What is data binding? One way, two way, some syntax. So data binding in AngularJS is the process of synchronizing data between the view, HTML, and the model, JavaScript scope variables. One-way data binding, the data flows from the model to the view. So the syntax is the double curly braces with the expression inside. And two-way data binding, data flows both ways between the model and the view. And the syntax is ng-model equals in double quotes the property name in there. This is some more on that. What is a module? In AngularJS, a module is a container for the different parts of an application, such as controllers, services, directives, filters, and configurations. Modules help organize your app into logical, maintainable units, and they allow you to load dependencies when needed. Why use modules? And to organize code into manageable pieces, encapsulate functionality to avoid polluting the global scope, and managing dependencies between different parts of the app, and to enable reusability. What is bootstrapping, and how do you bootstrap your application? So bootstrapping in AngularJS is the process of initializing and starting an AngularJS application. During bootstrapping, AngularJS compiles the HTML, links it with the defined modules and controllers and directives, and starts the cycle. It tells AngularJS which module is the main application module and where to attach the app to the DOM. So there are two ways to bootstrap in AngularJS. One for automatic bootstrapping, which is the most common, done by using the ng-app directive in HTML. And AngularJS automatically initializes the app when the page loads. An example, AngularJS automatically bootstraps the app at page load. Manual bootstrapping is used when you need more control over the app initialization. So AngularJS does not use ng-app, and you call angular.bootstrap and manually. What is a service? In AngularJS, a service is a singleton object or function that provides reusable functionality across the app. Services are used for business logic, data sharing, and utilities. They are created once and shared across multiple controllers, directives, and other components. AngularJS uses dependency injection to provide services wherever needed. So you use services for code reusability, separation of concerns, because it's a singleton nature and maintains a state across the app, and it's easier testing. What is a provider? In AngularJS, a provider is a special type of service that allows you to configure how a service is created before it is used in your application. It is the most flexible way to create a service. Providers are used during the configuration phase of AngularJS module. Every provider has a $get method that returns the service instance, and you use a provider for custom configuration. It allows you to pass configuration values during the module's config phase. Flexible service creation and singleton. How do you make an AJAX call in AngularJS? And AJAX in Angular, you use the $HTTP service with get, post, put, and delete methods. You handle the responses with promises and bind the data to the $scope for automatic view update. That is it for now. I thank you and wish you a great day.